In more mainstream or more broadly viewed media, often commentators will back down using the sort of excuse that, well, I'm just an entertainer, to get out of some of perhaps the more extreme statements they do make. Professionally speaking, in your work on the Georgian, do you consider yourself more of an entertainer or more of a thinker?
I like to think of myself more as more of an informer. I tried my best to give the best conservative argument that I can, and while I hope that my articles are entertaining so that people read them, but I really try to put out the information from the conservative side the best that I can.
Not very long ago, Health Affairs released a report that found that the United States actually lags behind a number of European countries, including France and the United Kingdom, when it comes to the rate of people lost to, and I quote, potentially preventable death, which is to say deaths occurring below the age of 75 that might have been avoided with timely and effective health care. That said, what do you think are the barriers to having a better healthcare system here in the United States?
I think one of the biggest things is just the amount of resources, the limited resources that we have. We have over 300 million people in this country. Countries like France and England and the UK have very small populations, which they can better distribute their resources. That being said, I do believe that healthcare reform is required for this country. I think instead of having a government-subsidized healthcare reform, we need to give it back to the private sector. We need to open up interstate commerce and health insurance, which will cause all the health insurance companies to be able to compete in all the states. That will bring down prices. It will allow for people who may have pre-existing conditions to compete in the healthcare system. So I think that that's one big way of helping the healthcare industry in this country.
Just in response to that, one important thing I think you mentioned is the idea that France, Britain, these are comparatively, these are rather small countries. But the fact is that these preventable deaths are not for a lack of spending on healthcare, and they aren't for the reason that we have to look after more people. In fact, the United States, we actually spend more on healthcare than any other industrialized nation, and per capita, we actually spend $7,960 per person per year on healthcare, whereas France, for example, spends approximately half that. What would you say in response to?
Well, a big chunk of that healthcare cost is coming from pharmaceutical industries and their subsidy on that. Us figuring out ways to develop drugs to combat these diseases, that's a big part of it. But I think another big part of it is that we just need to, honestly, we need to take better care of ourselves. They stress much better healthy living decisions over in the UK than we do over here. So I think that would also help bring down these, you said, preventable deaths.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with what Fritz is saying. Going back to, making it a better healthcare system in the United States, I would go off what he said. We need to open up the interstate commerce where we can buy insurance across state lines. I mean, when you bring that into play, that will drive the cost of insurance down. Right now, some states only have 2 to 3 options for insurance providers, and they get to name the price. Whereas if we can open this up and be able to, if I'm here in Georgia and I want to buy insurance in South Carolina because it's cheaper there, then why not? And obviously, the more competition there is, the more it's going to drive the price down. I know some people argue that, the government will come in and tax it more. I don't see how them being able to regulate interstate commerce, which of course through the Constitution they are, that would cost us more than what's being brought about now with the Affordable Care Act. where it's going to cost Americans, per person, just thousands and thousands of dollars on down the road.
So, since we had the first debate on Wednesday, George Farah, who is the founder and executive director of Open Debate and author of the book No Debate: How the Republican and Democratic Parties Secretly Control the Presidential Debate, pointed out how Democrats and Republicans tend to shut out third-party candidates from the presidential elections. For example, the Romney and Obama campaigns secretly negotiated a detailed contract as to who gets to participate and which topics are discussed during the debate. Now, taking that into account, what real value do the presidential debates have in political culture?
Well, right now we have two people running for president, and both of them are polling in the high 40s. We do not have a third-party candidate that is polling over 10%, or I don't even know if they're polling above 5%, that would be able to participate in this debate whatsoever. I think it is good to have more opinions. It's good to have more, different views and debates, and that's why we have the Young Americans for Liberty in our debates, because we like to have the three different views in the debates, because it helps students be more informed. And, obviously down the road, hopefully our generation can be a more informed generation where we're not just bogged down in a two-party system. But, it's not going to do any good for the American people to watch an hour and 30-minute long debate and, over half of it's going to a third-party candidate that means absolutely nothing to the election. And also this could cause a problem because two candidates could be very similar, and then there's one candidate that's not, and if that third-party candidate wasn't there, then it would be a closer race, or that the candidate that was favored with the other one, he doesn't win because of that, because he takes votes away from him. So hope maybe down the road we'll see this evolve more. Definitely the Libertarian Party is making a push. I frankly don't think there's anything wrong with them coming in at all. I think that's a good standpoint the Libertarians have. Obviously, I have disagreements on social issues and foreign policy, but the Republicans and Libertarians agree on a lot of things. And the one main thing that I see with the Libertarian Party is they're pushing for national offices. They're pushing for president or a Senate race. I don't see many Libertarians running for city council or state representative. I believe that if the Libertarian Party wants to be recognized as a party that can participate in things down the road and run for these other offices, you have to start at some point. And our political system is so old, if you want to break through it, you're going to have to break through it from the grassroots level at these smaller offices. So that would be my recommendation for these third parties if they want to be taken more seriously down the road.
Could it not be said, though, that they're not allowed into the debates or the Republican debates from the primaries earlier this year or whatever else because they're polling so low? But could it not be that they're polling so low because they're not let into any of the debates? I mean, half the candidates that ran for the Republican Party this year, I had never heard of before I saw them on TV in the debate.
I think that that could have been said several years ago, but with the advent of social media, bloggers, shows like this, I think it's become increasingly easy for third parties to get their message out and get support going. Now, going back to what we said about the debates, if like Jeff said, if all three candidates were polling in the 30s together, that would be one story. But we've got 48, 45, and then we have a couple,
three or fours
in the low numbers. So it's not even really a race. If they came up and through the grassroots movement, then I think that it would be a lot better for them. That's actually how the Tea Party got started. Is that there were a lot of city council people and lots of state representatives that were part of the Tea Party that moved their way up to the national level.
And of course, I will say that probably has a lot to do with media bias. They will, shun these third-party candidates out maybe sometimes. I mean, we run through media bias in even the two-party system. So obviously these newcomers, per se, they're definitely going to be shunned out in certain things. And that's why, our generation should be more informed. Don't get your news from one news source. ABC Nightly News doesn't cover everything. You need to go online, get different viewpoints, go to some blogs. I mean, just become as much as much diverse as you can in the political realm, because the more knowledge the better, and it increases how you can debate and how you can stand up for your issues, and who what of who you're voting for.
Are citizens responsible for checking the power of their government?
Absolutely. You have the Ninth Amendment of the Constitution, which the wording is very vague, but the wording basically means that the citizens are in charge of making sure that their rights and liberties are not infringed upon. We've always been we the people, and we've become very reliant on, the news is going to take care of being the watchdog, or there's all these groups that are in charge of being watchdog. But it's really, at the end of the day, it's our job to keep our politicians accountable.
So one of the important things, would you say, is that citizens have to know the internal workings of governmental institutions to be able to keep them in check?
Absolutely. I feel like I really believe that one class in college is not, the American government class is not enough to fully understand the inner workings of government. You don't talk about lobbying. You don't talk about the Fed. You don't talk about really the bureaucracy, which is really what runs this country. We need to be better informed, whether it be at the education level, the schools, informing students on the structures, or citizens taking the initiative on their own to dig deep into what's going on and how things work.